New Mexico is a land of stories, myths, and legends. The unexplained and the unexplored. I'm Chad Brummett, and we are exploring the unique and unusual world of New Mexico Strange. Hello, and thank you for joining us on this episode of New Mexico Strange. I'm Chad Brummett.
And I'm Stephanie Chavez.
So, Stephanie, obviously, when people are talking about UFOs, right? Like worldwide, Roswell always comes up.
Roswell always comes up.
We're going to break down some theories today, and one in particular that really struck me some years back. But before we get into it, because this is something you and I have never talked about.
Right. I mean, and we've talked about lots of
weird
strange things. So
exactly. But just really quickly, do you think it was aliens? Do you think it was?
Oh gosh. Okay. I don't know the answer to that question, Chad. I do believe that there is life out there.
There you go. Intelligent life.
There is intelligent life in the universe that is not here on Earth that we have not necessarily discovered. I am a believer in that. I don't know if what happened in Roswell is aliens.
All right. Well, we got a couple of gentlemen joining us today. They have probably got a little bit more information on this. Paul and Toby joining us down in Roswell, New Mexico. First, let's start off, guys. Tell us a little bit about yourselves and kind of your connection, aside from the geographic connection you have to this story. Paul, let's start with you. What is your connection with Roswell and the Roswell Incident, as we should refer to it as?
Sure. Well, currently, through some interesting circumstances, I am a tour guide for the Roswell UFO Tour. I have a chance to take a couple of thousand people around town every year, showing them the actual historical locations where real things happen. Indisputable that real things happened there, and we can all argue about what those were. But of course, I'm not a native of Roswell, unlike Toby, but I have had connections going back over a quarter of a century, back to my very first visit 28 years ago. I had a chance to meet Walter Haut and get his autograph, which was pretty cool. And my background is as a forensic engineer investigating car crashes. Here I am investigating the biggest crash of all.
Wow.
And I also have a real passion for researching military history. And so it's a perfect connection with Roswell. All the military men, what were their backgrounds and what brought them to this point to be a part of this amazing event. So I look into all of that.
Is that sort of the synergy of all of that? Is that what brought you to Roswell?
I've had friends here going back a long time, and I've come back for a number of occasions over the last 20 years, whether for weddings or for creative efforts. And then there was just a great opportunity to come out here and really focus on things that I enjoy doing and the research that I enjoy doing, and a huge mystery. And I love solving mysteries. I've been privileged to solve a few. For example, a 50-year-old mystery from the Vietnam War. What was the identity of a Marine whose body was found abandoned by his comrades in the field? For 50 years, a company of Marines carried with them the real heartache of an experience that they had, and they didn't know whatever happened. And I got into the case, and through some lucky breaks, I was able to solve it.
Wow.
To the point where Marines who had recovered a body were able to meet the living son of the man who they had recovered. Solving mysteries like that, I love doing. Who knows? Maybe I'll get lucky and be the one who solves the Roswell mystery. I doubt it. But
Paul just might be the one to convince me.
Right. See, there you go. Well, it's exciting. Now, Toby, you actually connected us with Paul on this as well. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Now, I heard Paul say that you're actually a native of Roswell. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Roswell, and I am actually sitting in the office of the Roswell Daily Record right now, where I work, and I cover the UAP UFO topic. As you know, we came out with the famous 1947 front page of Army finds flying disc on ranch near Roswell. So that's kind of the thing that got everything started. So I've been passionate about the subject my whole life, being raised here. You always heard stories and seen different things in the sky. So that's basically how I got into it. And since I've been in this job, I've traveled all over the country looking into different cases. I've been to Skinwalker Ranch.
Mm.
I was recently in Washington, D.C., talking to politicians about military personnel that have been injured by UAP encounters. One particular individual was actually giving full disability by the VA for injuries he encountered in a military UAP incident.
Really?
Yeah, his name is John Burroughs. He was in the Rendlesham Forest incident, which coincidentally is coined Britain's Roswell.
Mm-hmm.
Paul and I were talking about earlier, anytime you get a famous UFO case, it's whatever state or country's Roswell. So it's just for me, I'm passionate about working on the original Roswell.
And I think that that's kind of one of the, obviously the claims to fame, but one of the interesting things about the Roswell incident is that, like you said, that really is kind of the sort of what everything is measured on. And, well, it was as big as Roswell, or it was. And the thing that has always struck me that's funny is that the crash didn't happen in Roswell. Like it really, if we're being honest about where it crashed, it should be in Corona, New Mexico. Is that right?
Yep, that is correct. We've recently, obviously, Paul and I have been up in Corona quite a bit, and the town folk there are more than happy that Roswell took over the infamy from the case. They're content with just being left alone. You drive through town, you don't see aliens everywhere like you do here. So, but yeah, it's about 70 miles from us.
I think it's important to note that just geographically, where does the rancher, Mac Brazel, find the stuff?
Mm-hmm.
If you drew a straight line from Roswell to Corona, the location of his debris field is approximately 2/3 of the way between Roswell and Corona. So yes, it's closer to Corona, but at the same time, it is Roswell that has the military men who go out and recover material. It is Roswell who is tasked, the military here in Roswell, who are tasked with dealing with the situation and putting out the story to the world. And what's interesting to note is that in our experience, I'll just use this anecdotally, as we get to meet people out in the Corona area and the ranch area, we just find turn after turn that those people come to Roswell to do their shopping. We had a chance to visit with a very old man last year, set up an interview, and once it was set up, he lives out in that area. Once it was set up, he called me back and he said, "Paul, before you guys leave town tomorrow, would you mind picking up my dry cleaning right there off of Barindo in Roswell?" And it was like $20. I was happy to do it, but it just as an example of how the folks out there, I get the question often, why does the rancher bring stuff to Roswell? Mm-hmm. Well, it's because they routinely do their business here and always have, I think.
And they continue to do it. They get their dry cleaning and all that. That makes total sense. That makes total sense. What are some of the popular theories? If you got to say, but before we get into this one that was posed by Annie Jacobson, what are some of the popular theories of what actually happened? And again, Stephanie may be trying to be convinced.
Yeah.
that it was extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
Skeptical, exactly. But what are some of the leading theories about what actually happened in 1947?
Well, I'll start with the least popular one. It was a weather balloon. That was the official cover story. Obviously, most agree with that. There's also that a alien craft was flying in the middle of a thunderstorm and was struck by lightning, and that's what actually brought it down out in the desert. But being here and talking to people that have worked at places like Area 51, also known as Groom Lake, and some other sensitive facilities, I've heard everything from it being experimental aircraft to extraterrestrial to our own technology. And I'm sure Paul can go into some more details on some of those.
Yeah, sure. In the early days of the Roswell investigation, obviously they're looking into the balloon question because that's the official cover story that contradicts the Roswell press release hours later on the same day, that big Tuesday, July 8th, 1947. It is just the Wednesday after that, that cover story is published in most of the newspapers around the nation. That's 78 years ago today. We are recording on a Wednesday, July 9th. 78 years ago today. And that is when the rest of the stories, the people say retraction all the time. I don't like that word. Roswell puts out one story. They put out the story that we captured a flying saucer. It is their higher headquarters who contradicts that story and says, no, look, folks, they take some pictures. It's just a weather balloon. And of course, what people don't realize all too often about the famous pictures of Major Marcel posed with that tinfoil trash is that those pictures are not taken in Roswell. They're not taken anywhere in the state of New Mexico. Those were taken in Fort Worth at the Fort Worth Army Airfield in Texas. And those pictures confuse people because we're supposed to believe that explains the whole story. Well, they're not even taken in the state of New Mexico. So there's a huge hurdle right there, just in terms of creating a chain of custody and believability for those photos. But in the early, as the investigation unfolded, particularly throughout, it gets kicked off at the end of the 1970s. It kind of gets renewed and expanded in the late 1980s by Kevin Randall and Don Schmidt and the folks at the Center for UFO Studies in Chicago. That's when a much more expanded investigation kicks off. And throughout that time, they're looking at other possibilities. Was it a V-2 rocket that launched from White Sands and crashed? Was it a Japanese Fugo balloon, which during World War II they would launch and hope that it traveled across the Pacific and started forest fires in the United States? They're looking into those questions. Everyone, both military and civilian investigators, have looked for any other crash of an aircraft, such as maybe what we call today a broken arrow incident, where an atomic weapon or atomic material is aboard a craft that crashes and then they have to go retrieve it. And there's not one shred of data to suggest any of that is true. And then, of course, as the case has become popular, particularly since 1989, you have all these alternative theories. You've got folks saying it was secret Nazi programs being launched out of South America. You've got the theory from Annie Jacobson that we'll talk about, which is that it's something Russian. You've got something Nick Redfern, who I need to be careful. I'm not fully conversant with his theory, but he's going to say it's basically something American-made that happens to have some horrible biological experimentation on it. And so there's other theories that go around, and no one's ever been able to produce a shred of documentation to say any of those theories are true. They can marshal all sorts of circumstantial evidence for it, but they can't actually point to a document or a photo or a map or a hidden archive of data that says the theory is true. Yeah. And so that's why it continues to be a topic of fascination and a topic of investigation. Today, there are still new things to discover.
Stay with us. More New Mexico Strange after this.
How much has the fact that, there are no real answers to be given at this point in time, all these years later, how much has that fueled the tourism economy in Roswell, though? I mean, it created a whole industry, the curiosity.
Yeah. Obviously, Paul runs a UFO tour, so that should give you some sort of hint to it. I don't know how many times I've been called at the newspaper and asked if I've been to Area 51, since we're right next to it, which, you're about 700-800 miles in the wrong direction. But we get people even up here. We're just a working family-owned newspaper, and we have people stopping in here asking questions or, bringing in possible leads and everything. But anybody that's been to Roswell can go down Main Street and tell you, even our lampposts are alien hits. So, yeah, we actually just finished up with the Roswell UFO Festival, which happens usually every first weekend in July. And it's a big drive in tourism. The UFO Museum gets hundreds of thousands visitors from all over the world each year. So it's definitely stimulated the economy.
And it continues. I mean, it's still so much in pop culture. There have been, there was a TV series and then there was a reboot of the TV series Roswell. I know that it's become so much part of our pop culture that it really is. It's synonymous with this idea of, UAPs or UFOs, whichever acronym you want to use. One thing that I was curious to get your feedback on, and again, I stumbled across this. I read this book by Annie Jacobson, who is she is an author. She is a journalist, works for the LA Times, has written a number of things. She also wrote, I think, one of the scariest books I have ever read in my life, called Nuclear War: A Scenario.
Oh, you did tell me about this book.
It is horrifying, because it's this theoretical thing of how World War III would start, and she did it through, all of her stuff is incredibly well researched. But the book I'm talking about is Area 51, that she wrote about, and this theory that she had spoken to an anonymous source. So that's, again, important. This is an anonymous source in her book, that says what...
It's not anonymous anymore.
It's not anonymous anymore. Who, really? They dropped the name.
Yes. She has stated who he was. This has been confirmed by George Knapp, who was also someone who was in communication with this man. His name is Al O'Donnell. He was involved in, I don't know how far back he goes in the nuclear program. I don't know his full biography well, but he was apparently involved in the Operation Crossroads atomic bomb tests.
Really?
Which the 509th Bomb Group leaves Roswell in 1946 to go out to Bikini Atoll in the Pacific and conduct the first public demonstrations of an atomic detonation. Al O'Donnell is a fellow who is involved in that.
Okay.
And then goes on to have a long career with a company called EG&G. But yes, Annie has revealed that that's who her source was. He's a principal character in the book. And so anyone who might have read it and had kind of a sense of what's going on in the background might have deduced that he's the likely source before she admitted it. And of course, I think it was about 2 years ago on one of their podcasts, the Weaponized podcast, George Knapp goes into great detail describing his relationship with Al O'Donnell and confirms that obviously that's the source for Annie's tale.
Really? Okay, so that is good to know, because I've got a question for you here in a second then. So this theory that or what he had said they saw at Area 51, that it was a flying saucer, but the idea was that it could have been from the Nazi scientists that went to Russia post World War II, that Stalin actually did this as a psychological warfare tactic, that they flew this object into, at the time, again, the 509th Wing based in Roswell, very sensitive area in the United States, flew it into this controlled airspace to crash it, and that the bodies were actually failed experiments on children, that, in different eugenics experiments, that some of these people, that's potentially what these bodies were. And it struck me because it was the first time that I had heard any of these theories about Roswell, and I grew up here, native New Mexican, listening to stories about Roswell. The first time that I was like, that seems to check off more, because like you said, you look at the photos of Jesse Marcel holding what looks like tinfoil from a pack of cigarettes. In these photos, it doesn't look like a weather balloon. It doesn't look like a UFO. It looks exactly like tinfoil. But this was the first time that I saw this and thought to myself, that seems plausible. Horrifying.
Can I make sure we have a correct understanding of what you're looking at in the photos where Major Marcel is holding that tinfoil material? That is the payload for a weather balloon. People get confused. I've literally had an Air Force veteran who was involved in weather observations look at those photos and kind of laugh and say to me, you can tell that's not a weather balloon, that's tinfoil. And I have to be like, no. That is the tinfoil radar target payload carried by a weather balloon.
Gotcha.
So you are looking at, in simple terms, Major Marcel posed with an incredulous look on his face in front of a pile of weather balloon trash. That is exactly what that is. And people get confused because they're thinking a balloon like you blow up and with helium and float up into the sky, and then they're looking at tinfoil and it makes a disconnect. But that is weather balloon payload material.
Wow.
So
Okay.
so that's I mean that's the cover up is not what you're looking at in the pictures. The cover up is, in its simplest term, the idea that those pictures show you what was found at Roswell. I think we can very credibly say they do not. They show you a stage prop.
Yeah.
That there's no evidence it was ever on Rancher Mac Brazel's land.
Gotcha. So to the end of this idea, this theory that it was a Russian psyops. Now knowing who this guy is, and I didn't know that the George Knapp had covered this, and that Annie Jacobson had revealed it. Do you think there's merit to what he's saying?
I think the idea could plausibly have happened. I tend to think that that's not what happened. I mean, we've all heard stories of the Nazis experimenting on people with genetics and other things. And we've also heard of Die Glocke, which is called the bell. It's supposedly an anti-gravity that the Nazis developed. My thing is, just like with the Fugo balloons from Japan, I think most people don't know about those. You're talking low-tech balloons that they would launch with incendiary devices that they wanted to hit in forests and everywhere and cause fires. That I can see getting around because we had newer radar equipment out here that was picking up things that were supposed to be there and weren't be there. So to me, the plausibility of them managing to just fly that in undetected and then go and crash it in the absolute middle of nowhere, hoping someone would find it, to me, it just doesn't seem likely.
Mm.
Just think if you're going to do it, why not land it in town? Why not land it near the bombers out at the
Sure.
airbase? You want to cause panic, that's the quickest way to do it.
Sure.
I think there's, as I kind of described, there's a whole series of other theories that people, you might have one witness or two witnesses, and you might piece together a story, and it's your theory. That's great. Build a theory, build a model of the case, and then go look for the evidence. What Annie's got is the theory that comes from one source. And I mean, we should be grateful that she puts it out there, right? She collected some data. Here's a guy who said something. Put that out to the world so we can evaluate. We want that. But a lot of these things, they will be, as I already said, there's no documentation or anything. You can't go and find a particular Russian aircraft program and then see, oh, look, here's their records show that one of their vehicles was lost in July of 1947,
Mm-hmm.
and even start to put together some sort of documentary trail that tends toward the theory. What it is, it's circumstantial.
Mm-hmm.
These ideas that, and we have a good friend here in Roswell who talks about the distinct possibility that they weren't aliens, they were children with progeria. And there's circumstantial evidence he can marshal for that, but you can't identify a document that says this really happened. And obviously I am in awe of a lot of what Annie Jacobson was able to pull together. The interviews with CIA test pilots and building the story of what happened out there in the Nevada test range, developing our amazing spy planes. I'm in awe of the sources that she's able to pull together. But I have to be very, I have to be critical of her ability to understand the Roswell case.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote this book. It comes out in 2011. So presumably, she's doing a lot of her writing and research in 2009, 2010. And when you look at her list of sources relating to the Roswell case, she cites the very first book that came out, 1980. The Roswell Incident was the literal name of the book. And then her only other sources are a couple of books put out by the Smithsonian Institution that are totally debunking of the Roswell case, saying it literally was nothing but a few pounds of Project Mogul balloon trash, which, if that's true, that means hundreds of people involved in the Roswell case who have testified are all liars. Okay, those are her sources. Now, she did talk to legendary researcher Stanton Friedman. She had a conversation, but she doesn't list that she read his book.
Mm-hmm.
And she cites nothing from the most voluminous authors who have done the most interviews on the Roswell case. And I'm talking about Kevin Randall, Don Schmidt, Tom Carey, and then on the naysayers side, people like Carl Flock. She doesn't cite any of these very, substantial works.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes me wonder, how much did she know about the decades-long investigation of the Roswell case? How much did she know about the witnesses who came out and told tales and then they were revealed to be not telling the truth?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't understand the history of the investigation, then it can be very hard when one witness is telling you an amazing story. It can be very hard to smell the garbage that's being thrown at you, if indeed that's what it is.
Sure.
So I just feel like I wonder, well, and she gets certain basic facts of the Roswell story wrong, not controversial type things, but the clear and obvious facts as they were reported on the day in the newspapers, and which witnesses in later years confirmed. She gets certain details wrong. So I just, as much as I am in awe of the amazing work that she's done, I cannot treat her as having a credible understanding of the Roswell case to be able to put forward an alternative theory.
Don't go anywhere. New Mexico Strange. We'll be right back.
Paul, maybe you can speak to this. Both of you are welcome to chime in, but I'm curious. We're talking about these bodies, and on several occasions they've been referred to as whether they were kids that were used as experiments that went wrong, or kids suffering from an illness. It strikes me as odd that back in the day there wasn't more tests done on these bodies to kind of determine if they were kids, if they weren't kids, where they came from. What kind of documentation do we have, if any, on those bodies? Is there?
Well, there's none. I mean, I think it's important to realize that the Roswell case, let me tell you the government's position. The Roswell case is literally nothing happened except maybe a trunk full of balloon trash fell in a small patch of land, and 3 or 4 officers got a little too excited about it, and the media ran away with the false story. And every other bit of the tale is myth-making and lies and people getting their memories confused. And that's it. There is almost zero mention of the Roswell incident other than newspaper articles, almost zero mention in any government documents. The Air Force, when they do their investigation, they did it in the 1990s. They can basically say, look, from today's perspective, they can say, there's nothing for us to declassify.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing happened. There's not one shred of documentation to say any unusual activity happened on the base. There's not one shred of documentation to say that recovery teams went out to a crash site. There's not one shred of documentation to say there even was a crash site. That's the government's position. And that's a, it's a pretty unassailable position. And that is the problem that Roswell researchers have contended with for nearly half a century now, is that there's almost no contemporary documentation from the time that describes something big happened. But what do we do have? Literally hundreds of people saying something big happened. And so the silence in the documentation speaks volumes. The lack of any follow-up by even the local press here in Roswell in the days to come, that speaks volumes. People, I'm pretty confident people were silenced and documents would have been destroyed or buried. And that's why it's called a cover-up.
Yeah.
Because you just can't square the fact that you have all these witnesses describing an event and no documents anywhere, no photos, nothing to say it happened. So as far as the bodies go, I'm sure they would have examined the bodies at great length, but we don't have any documents.
So it kind of goes to show the fake news narrative has dated back a very, very long time.
Exactly. Yeah. And it too, I mean, Toby can attest to this as well as being a journalist. Part of our jobs is to verify, right? Like you have to verify this information We do it in our newsroom, in our news department all the time. We're not just going to run and put something on without verification. And so it brings that up, that how do you do it if you have got nothing to verify it other than eyewitness testimony? And, some people will say, well, there is merit to that. Some people say there is not, that eyewitness testimony sometimes can be flawed. But I think, Paul, you bring up a really excellent point, is that we're not talking about just a couple of people that saw it. You're talking a number of, I know that there have been stories that, a local undertaker had been, and again, this is just the various stories that I've heard throughout the years, that some, they were contacted to get small coffins, and, all of these various stories that this network of people saw something or heard something. And are they all wrong? Is it something that, mass hysteria, panic? Who knows? But it's difficult since we don't have those primary documents, other than, like you said, what the Roswell newspaper put out and the photos that the Air Force put out. At the end of the day, I know we got to wrap up here. We could probably unpack this thing all day. At the end of the day, Paul, we'll start with you. What do you think happened? What was it, in your opinion?
I don't know yet. But do you guys want a world exclusive broadcast premiere of some very new data?
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding?
There was an officer who was interviewed 30 years ago. His name was Chester Barton. He was interviewed only by one researcher ever. The researcher conducting the interview had given up on Roswell. He thought it was all a myth. It turns out that this officer, Chester Barton, who had been to the crash site, according to his testimony, he also did not think it was a flying saucer. He did not know what it was, but he assumed the flying saucer business was just the media getting carried away with hysteria. And he was, according to his testimony, he was asked by a senior official on the base to go out to the crash site, take a look around, don't get too close to anything, make sure that the recovery operation is going well, and then come back and give a verbal report. And this officer, as he talked to Chester Barton, as he talked to the researcher, he insisted that the thing that crashed out there, it had a crew on board, not a weather balloon, guys. But here's the new fact. The question has always been, why would Chester Barton be asked to go out to the crash site and take a look around? I mean, okay, he's a little older than most of the officers. He's a little more trusted, but why is he sent out there? 2 weeks ago, I found the answer. It's a 1945 newspaper article that mentions Chester Barton. We know it's the right guy because it mentions his wife and it mentions his brother and it mentions what city his brother lives in. And it tells us what Chester Barton did during World War II. You know what he did? He was a crash retrieval specialist in the deserts of North Africa, going out to locate downed German fighters so that they could be cut apart, loaded into crates, and shipped back to the United States for reverse engineering and scientific analysis.
Wow.
Now we know why he's told to go to this Roswell crash site, look around, and make sure things are going okay, because he knows what that operation is supposed to look like. And this guy said there was a crew on board the thing that crashed. Do you think they would have sent him out if it was just some balloon trash?
Probably not.
So.
No, I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I'll say no too. Wow, that is incredible. Yeah. Toby, what do you think? What do you think it was that, growing up there in Roswell, you've had a front row seat your entire life. What do you think happened?
Well, I agree with Paul. We still don't know exactly, but I've spoken to too many people that were alive at the time to think that it's a weather balloon. And based on investigations we're currently doing out at the actual locations, we have actually found, see if I can get it on camera here, samples of metal that are not in the known database.
Wow.
So what you have here is a epoxy puck with 4 metal samples that have been run through SEM, scanning electron microscope, and have come back with ratios that don't match up to most any known alloy, as far as I know. So I'm still hopeful there's physical evidence out there that can finally put this to rest once and for all. And further testing is needed, but so far we don't know what it is.
Wow.
That's interesting that you say that, Toby, because you said you hope that you can kind of put it to rest once and for all. But back to my first question about the tourism industry and how much this mystery has drawn people to Roswell. Do you think having an answer would stop that? Would kind of impact people wanting to go check it out if they knew exactly what happened?
I really don't think so. So let's say somehow you actually prove it was extraterrestrial. To me, more people are going to want to come.
Oh, for sure.
If it's an experimental aircraft that led to this mystery all this time, it's already so ingrained into pop culture that I don't think it would really affect it. I mean, there's a new Roswell documentary TV episode coming out almost every year. So who knows? Maybe an answer might make people more interested in coming to see where all this actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, clearly we're sitting here in Albuquerque talking about it today. So
2025.
Yeah,
Doesn't get old.
The theories, the stories, they I think will continue. And at the end of the day, honestly, I'm in the same boat. I don't know what happened. There are things that are compelling to me. Do I think it was aliens? I don't think it was extraterrestrial. Sadly, I think there may be more of an insidious explanation, human-involved explanation. But my jury is definitely out. Stephanie, you are the one. What do we think after all this conversation?
Well, so I still am unsure, right? I'm not positive. But after Toby pointed out that metal that isn't identifiable, that to me says, well, where did it come from then?
Yeah.
Where did it come from?
Tell you
Where
what,
did it go?
I tell you what, next time you guys are in the Roswell area, let me and Paul know, and we can show you where this metal came from and give you an idea of just how in the middle of nowhere it is.
Yeah.
And why it doesn't make sense to crash something out there for someone to find, in my opinion.
Right. Well, the jury's going to be out. Guys, thank you for your time. This has really been fun, very eye-opening. And I think it just highlights the fact that there are a lot more questions than answers. And maybe that's not the worst thing in the world for the local economy, for questions, for tourism. I know one of my favorite things to do, and I do it every couple of years, is go down to the UFO museum and just check it out.
Peruse.
And there's a restaurant, I think, that's like across the street that you wouldn't even know it's there, but they make a great enchilada. Oh my goodness.
There you go.
Yeah, get out there. And then also get McDonald's at a UFO.
I was going to say UFO McDonald's, great enchiladas, UFO museum. I think we've got it all. All the bases are covered.
All the bases are covered. Guys, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And guys, thank you for joining us. Stephanie and I, we're going to continue to sort of...
Yeah, I'm gonna do a little bit more reading, maybe. Again, that metal, that piece of metal is what, at the very end of our interview, is the one that grabbed me and was like, maybe it was extraterrestrials? I don't know.
And that there's still more information as we're going along, talking about, this officer that you uncover. I mean, this is, just a couple of weeks ago. It's 2025.
Crew on board.
Yeah, very fascinating. We don't have the answers. We're going to, Mulder and Scully over here are going to continue to look.
We encourage you to do the same.
Exactly. Head down to Roswell, get a great enchilada, have fun at the museum. Also, make sure that you download the KRQE Now app on all of your streaming devices to catch all the episodes of New Mexico Strange and other programming with our KRQE original programming. There's a lot going on. In the meantime, I'm Chad Brummett.
I'm Stephanie Chavez.
This has been New Mexico Strange. We'll see you next time. Or maybe we won't. Maybe we'll get abducted by aliens.